Live from Arlington, Virginia, this is Transport Topics Newsmakers, the digital interview series that gives you access to candid conversations between industry experts and a veteran reporter. Here's your host, Dan Ronan.
Welcome to Newsmakers from Transport Topics. I'm Dan Ronan. I'm honored to host this conversation with leading figures in the trucking, freight, and logistics industry. Today, we look forward to having, I think, what will be a very timely conversation discussing the logistics of moving the COVID-19 vaccine and the distribution. Since early in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has dominated not just here in the United States, but around the world. So much of our attention is focused on ways to avoid becoming ill. Phrases such as wear your mask, wash your hands, and social distancing have become, as we know, all very commonplace. In record time, though, a number of pharmaceutical companies have developed highly effective vaccines that have the potential to end the spread of this deadly virus. But now the challenge for the trucking, freight, and logistics industry will be getting those life-saving vaccines to every corner of the world and vaccinating potentially billions of people. Joining us to discuss this is Larry St. Onge. She's the president of DHL's Life Science and Healthcare Unit. Larry, thank you for joining us here on Transport Topics on Newsmaker. Please give us a little bit of an overview of this distribution for the COVID-19 vaccine and what DHL's role is in all of this.
Sure, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today, Dan. So, in regard to the COVID-19 vaccine, as I've been quoted in the past, and will certainly continue to reinforce when I speak publicly about this, this is, in my estimation, the largest healthcare logistics challenge the world's ever seen. And quite simply, there are three factors, in my estimation, that make it so. First and foremost, we're talking about everybody in the world wanting the vaccine at the same time. Now, obviously, that's not possible, but to deploy a vaccine around the world in this environment where there's reduced air freight capacity, where there's challenges daily with being able to keep product moving, to keep supply chain integrity in place, and it's certainly being challenged from all aspects, from a resiliency and a responsiveness perspective. Needless to say, it's a unique challenge. To frame that even maybe a step further, Dan, the world normally consumes between 3 and 4 billion doses of vaccine on an annualized basis. That's all vaccines, the flu vaccine, the meningitis vaccine, smallpox, things of that sort. And DHL distributes millions of kilos of those vaccines on an annual basis already. So we understand this aspect and what that supply chain looks like quite well. But now we're talking, in order to inoculate the world for COVID-19, potentially the need to distribute 10 billion plus doses. The world has a population of under 8 billion, so why 10 billion? Well, as has been publicized, some of the vaccines will require 2 inoculations, perhaps just a few weeks apart. So ensuring that we can keep supply chain flowing, that we can keep product flowing to the ends of the earth, truly the ends of the earth when you think about it in that context, it's a unique challenge in an environment where we've seen 40 to 50% of the aircraft capacity from a cargo perspective come down because of the reduction in belly space on passenger aircraft that are no longer flying around the world. When we see ports, airports and ocean ports strained from a capacity perspective, one, because of the need to keep staffing in place and their own challenges with managing the impact COVID-19 has on that workforce, but also just in the infrastructure inside those ports. The companies that offload the cargo from there are unique handlers at different airports around the world. And we've seen challenges in that regard, scheduling those flights and being able to ensure the capacity. And then the final thing that I think has been well documented in the press, Dan, is the temperature challenges that come with this. The vaccine supply chain typically moves at a 5C temperature, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, plus or minus, a couple of degrees. We're talking about, with some of the vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, others, some unique temperature requirements. And when you start to look at that, particularly relative to Pfizer and the mRNA sequence, which is the underlying biotechnology that they're using to create their vaccine, We're talking at a minus 70 and a minus 80 C temperature, more than minus 90 degree Fahrenheit below zero, not even below freezing, below zero. So those are extreme temperatures. Those temperatures, in order to maintain that for a transportation cycle from end to end, require the use of dry ice. That's the only cost-effective way to be able to create and manage moving product in a supply chain at those temperature levels. Well, dry ice, when it consumes itself, when it melts, creates carbon dioxide, which is a poisonous gas. It can have a threat or a risk to people on an airplane, whether it's a passenger or a crew. So there are limitations to the amount of dry ice you can have on an aircraft. And those limitations can be adjusted somewhat because of, the packaging, for instance, that's being used, which may sublimate or essentially reduce the amount of dry ice or the carbon dioxide as it leaks into the environment because it prolongs it, it slows it. But still, there are challenges. There are limitations to the amount of it. So when you start thinking about moving product around the world and all these different temperature regimes, I mean, I have no fear about the northern hemisphere for the most part, the U.S., Europe, the well-developed countries. I think we're in good shape there. But when I look at the southern hemisphere and some of the lesser developed countries where the infrastructure, the logistics capability, perhaps even some of the intellectual sweat equity, if I coin that phrase, to understand what it takes to really be able to do this, I have some doubts or some concerns. And, really that's what DHL has been focused on.
I was going to bring that up because here in the United States, we've heard a lot about how UPS and FedEx are splitting up the country, East Coast, West Coast, for the distribution of the vaccine. And from what I've read, DHL is handling a lot of the international locations, places such as Germany, Israel, and other places around the world. Is that accurate?
I can't speak to specific countries, but obviously we're quite engaged. And, Pfizer has made their own announcement about DHL as one of their partners. I'll just let it stand at that and say that, like their other partners, we have a key role at trying to be part of the solution. So,
I saw a picture on your LinkedIn page the other night of the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu, standing in front of a DHL plane as the vaccine was presumably being unloaded. I know you've been out of the country a lot lately. Were you in Israel at that event when the vaccine was unloaded?
No, I wasn't in Israel, but I was in Germany at the time that was going on. So, yeah, I was neck deep in some project work related to this. So.
You were talking about the extraordinarily cold temperatures, 90 degrees below zero for the Pfizer vaccine. I've had the opportunity on two occasions to tour your cold storage facility at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Give our viewers an explanation of some of the challenges that are being faced with regards to the temperature. 90 degrees below zero. I mean, that's colder than the South Pole on a really cold day. That does make for some challenges, doesn't it?
Yeah, when I was trying to explain this to my kids about how cold it is, I said it's colder than what it's like when you're flying in an airplane, the outside of the aircraft when you're at 40,000 feet. And I guess for some reason that analogy stuck with them. So that's what we're talking about, though. You're talking about extremely cold temperature, deep frozen state. In order to do that, again, with the dry ice, what it brings into account is the complexity about first having a package, an exterior package around the vaccine that can hold that kind of dry ice and can be exposed to those internal conditions, those internal temperatures without cracking, without doing something that somehow puts the vaccine at risk. And I think there's a lot of science that's gone into developing those packaging types that are out there and certainly that are being used in the marketplace. But again, to ensure the availability of supply of that packaging, to ensure that you've got enough of it to be able to satisfy the demand as the product starts to flow around the world. Luckily, some of the other vaccines that are coming behind that may not require such deep frozen states. But even so, I still think that we'll see minus 20, in some cases, and certainly a good amount of business or vaccine that will move at the 5C temperature as well.
Yeah, I've heard that the Moderna vaccine and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson may not require as cold a temperatures as the Pfizer vaccine does. So will that make the task a little bit easier?
It'll make it a little bit easier. I mean, there's still the challenge of distributing 3 or 4 times what the world normally sees of, vaccine volume around the world all at the same time. And that's the other challenge. I mean, as we move vaccines, typically in our network today, like I said, we move millions of kilos of vaccines on an annual basis anyway. That tends to be seasonal. So when you're in the southern hemisphere and it's summertime down there, our winter, we're not moving as much flu vaccine to Brazil or to South America or to the African continent. As an example, this won't be that situation. It'll be everybody in the world wants it now. And that'll be the challenge. I think with regard to some of the capacity and some of the constraints, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's a little hard to predict as we wait to see how many other vaccines are going to successfully arrive, and be able to receive the EUA, the emergency use authorization that is so critical to be able to deploy this at the moment. But I think that it is going to be a challenge, and certainly we're involved in discussions with a number of parties. UNICEF acting as the logistics arm for COVAX, and a number of other NGOs, as well as a number of governments around the world, and trying to help them plan and prepare for this. So it's an ongoing challenge, and certainly the final mile will be the most critical element for it, I think.
One of the things that I'm most impressed by, Larry, is the work by the pharmaceutical companies to get this done so quickly. For those of us who know anything about history, the polio vaccine took many years to get it right. Other vaccines have been 3-4 years in development. This has gotten from start to finish about 9 months, which is a testament to the great work that's being done by pharma to get this done in such a way. As one who spent his entire career in the transportation industry and in life sciences in particular, what do you say to that?
Well, I think what we're seeing is a changing of the guard, so to speak, or that kind of an analogy. What I mean, Dan, is that I think it's the convergence of technology, or really data, and life sciences, the pharmaceutical industry, coming forward. And I think it's going to change the world as we know it, because I think what we're seeing now may only be the first of many, many opportunities in the future where you'll see these pharmaceutical companies be able to partner with, some of these massive AI companies, or companies that have these advanced, analytics capabilities, to really be able to dive the data and understand, okay, how do we go about developing a solution, a treatment? So for me, it's encouraging. But it's also a little scary in the context that, what people don't realize, I think, often enough, is that the clinical trial process is not just designed to capture information about the impact on the patient, but it also allows the pharmaceutical manufacturer to capture data and insight as to how the drug will react as it's exposed to different temperature regimes. So for instance, how long can you take a product that has to typically be stored at a -70, -80 C temperature range and expose it to a controlled room temperature of 15 to 25 C, for instance, or even 35 C. If we go into the, close to 100 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the southern hemisphere right now in some parts of the world, or more than that in Australia, places like that. How long can you expose that product to that temperature before it starts to go bad? So that's why I think you're seeing this stringent case approach that certainly Pfizer's been examined in the press for. I think they're taking an absolute. We will do whatever we have to protect our product and make sure that it has the efficacy that we know it needs to have in order to help the world change. So in that regard, I'm encouraged, but it does heighten the problem, or the challenge, I should say, in front of us.
And all of these COVID-19 vaccine packages are tagged with electric monitors and RFID coding to make sure that they stay at the proper temperature, and also to make sure that they're secure and that they're not lost, or someone were to misappropriate or steal them. So I mean, there's all sorts of other precautions that are being taken to keep an eye on these, to make sure that they remain safe and they're not compromised.
Yeah, they in fact do exactly what you just described. You described it very well, Dan. I mean, the one challenge that comes with that, though, is those devices are powered by lithium batteries. So As you know from your own transportation experience, lithium batteries present their own type of hazardous material challenges, and certainly, from a declaration perspective, from a management perspective, have to be carefully monitored, particularly as it comes to air traffic or air cargo. So, in that regard, it's just another layer in the puzzle that we need to make sure we understand fully and really be able to solve. Not only on the outbound side, because it's critical, obviously, to be able to get the product there. But at the same time, these are expensive packaging types of packaging. So being able to recover that packaging and be able to reverse the flow so we can move it back to the manufacturing site so it can be sterilized and reutilized is an important aspect of this as well as ensuring continuity of supply to dry ice. I mean, at some points, these devices, these packages are designed to be essentially self-sustainable storage units as long as you can replenish the dry ice to help the product stay at that temperature range. So that's part of the challenge that we're working through with the manufacturers as well to ensure that we do have access to dry ice, or in fact, potentially could even air freight additional shipments of dry ice into the point of utilization, to the vaccination center, so to speak, so that they can protect that product and ensure that it's, again, got that efficacy that's necessary to deliver what should be the payloads.
I've, as I said, I've been in that Chicago facility twice, and it is by far one of the most amazing places I've ever been in. If you're a logistics guy and you want to see something where there's a lot of really cool things taking place all at one time. But I understand you've had to add some other cold storage facilities in your network, certainly not as large as that warehouse, 450,000 square feet, but you've had to enlarge your network in order to do this. Is that correct?
Yes, Dan. So, one of the first things we set about doing when we started to anticipate and prepare for the vaccine distribution that was to come was to analyze the gaps in our network and start to look at where we potentially needed to make investments to enhance our capabilities, potentially adding ultra-low temperature storage units in some cases, or expanding refrigerated capabilities, enhancing our access to dry ice, all those types of things. DHL is a focused company, a company focused on life sciences and healthcare is, more than 2 decades into this. So we've invested billions to build a network that we think rivals anybody in the world. And, although we can't solve the problem at all on our own, when it comes to it, I do think we can be a strong part of the solution. And that's really what we want to do with the DHL healthcare system. That's a system of more than 9,000 employees around the world that work in 120 plus facilities that on the forwarding side, that work in hundreds of stations or in our express network, that work in nearly 200 warehouses in more than 45 countries around the world. So we've got a very well developed healthcare system, and we certainly understand at the end of the day, it's people like you and I, patients, that sit in the center of that. So that's kind of the moral imperative, and I'm certainly keen, as well as everybody else in our system is, to be part of the solution.
Have you added employees or moved people from other divisions within the company into the health and life sciences division because of just the enormity of this task?
I mean, in some instances, I wouldn't be able to speak specifically to all the adjustments we've made, but when we've had to make staffing changes or add capabilities, you talk about ultra-low temperature storage units as an example. They burn a lot of electricity, so ensuring you have the adequate generator equipment to be able to protect that in the event of a power outage or brownout. I mean, it's all those kinds of details that really go into this. This isn't a business that somebody can suddenly decide to get into tomorrow. You really have to have a network and a system, and as much as anything, not to be too redundant, that intellectual sweat equity, that understanding of what it takes to plan a successful standard operating procedure on a point pair, airport to airport, ocean port to ocean port, whatever it might be, and really understand how it's all going to flow, how everything has to go, and you have to tick the box, and how you monitor and how you recover, and how the relationships with the airlines to be able to get the product moving if it's sitting on the tarmac too long. There's just 1,001 little details that go into it, but that successfully will differentiate between, I should say will differentiate between a successful campaign and a non-successful one, at least in my opinion.
Literally, the world first became aware, just the first inkling of trouble that something was going bad about a year ago. It was around Christmas time, 2019, where we heard that there was this mysterious virus in China that was making people sick. And it wasn't until late February, early March, I always use the date around March 11th, the date the NBA shut down and the date that Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, his wife, both became ill, ironically on the same day, and we heard about it. And then our office is closed and we began, this remote work that we've all been doing now for 10 months. Since this is being done in the U.S. under the direction of Operation Warp Speed, I know there's been a lot of cooperation between your companies, the federal government, DHL, FedEx, UPS. When did all the planning begin on this for the distribution of the vaccine? Was it March the 13th where someone picked up the phone and said, we're going to get a vaccine here. We're going to get it as quickly as we can, and we need to start planning because when this vaccine is available, we have to have a logistics plan to get it moving. When did the planning begin?
I'd say around the mid-year mark. I think everybody was still waiting and certainly keenly wondering, could the pharmaceutical companies actually create a vaccine and that accelerated of a time period? I mean, you read the same press I do, Dan, but we saw daily articles that, there's no way. Some would conjecture, and then others would say the opposite. Yes, it can be done, but it's going to take, new science, new integration between, the biopharma companies and the advanced analytics capabilities of some of the science companies that are out there. So, I think what we've seen is that convergence. So the logistics planning, though, started. I think as companies started to realize that there were options, that they saw, that they understood the virus and the underlying impact that it was creating, and how to attack it. More importantly, as the computers came forward with models and ideas, that's when the planning started to come forward. We started to work on that with some of the manufacturers, and then a little bit behind that, but quickly enough, the NGOs and some of the public sector as well.
We really are in a race against time here too, because we're into another wave of this pandemic. We've had 2,000, 3,000 people a day dying, even with improved treatment in the hospitals and in the care centers. We're still losing a lot of people. So this really is to get this vaccine rolled out first to the healthcare workers, then the first responders, and then further down the line. Every day that it takes to get this vaccine rolled out, we lose thousands of people.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's critical. And, thankfully, we are starting to see vaccine move around the world. And I think there'll be more coming in a short period of time. So, in that regard, I think it's just a matter of time. It's tough to wait. My wife is a healthcare worker. She's a nurse manager at a large clinic just outside of New York City. And they're starting to inoculate staff at her clinic. So I'm excited to see the vaccine start to arrive, and certainly anticipating that, by the middle to latter part of the third quarter next year, that hopefully we've all been able to have access to the vaccine and, can see the world returning to a level of normalcy or some state much better than where we're at right now. It's still a challenging environment.
My son and daughter-in-law are both trauma rooms in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, working in the nursing business. And every time I talk to the two of them, I tell them, listen, guys, just hang out, hang in there as long as we can. The vaccine's coming, but make sure you got your face shields on, your mask, your gloves. Do what you need to do. Double, triple check it, like your wife, because you don't want to get this virus. People I've talked to who have gotten it said that it can be debilitating.
Yeah, I've had similar stories and experiences with people I know as well. So, I know people that have lost family members from this. It hits close to home. I mean, my wife, goes to work every day and wears a mask and a face visor. And so, work as she knew it has changed. And it's going to continue to accelerate some of those changes. I mean, it's not just the e-commerce area that's going to continue to accelerate. I think telemedicine is an offshoot of this, and we'll see more and more of that in the future, and certainly more focus and more accelerated movement to go direct to patient in the future as well. So,
Got only a couple minutes left, Larry, and I want to squeeze a couple of questions in before we conclude. One of the things I found interesting about this in the logistics industry is that it's done out of sight. You almost don't even notice it. It gets done so professionally, without a lot of flash, without a lot of attention. It just gets done. What is it like having the eyes of the world literally on your company and on others involved in this, FedEx, UPS, and the others that are involved in this, as we're watching this and you're moving this vaccine out with cameras in the warehouses, in the facilities, being interviewed on television programs? I saw you the other night on CNBC with Shepard Smith. I mean, you're getting a lot of attention, not you personally, but the logistics industry.
No, I couldn't agree more, Dan. And I think certainly nobody had ever surmised it would be like this, at the end of last year, or even in the first quarter. I anticipated potentially something very different than the year has unfolded to be. But I guess the underlying point I would make is that what the world is starting to realize is that in order to make health happen, or for healthcare to happen at its best, the logistics have to as well. And I think that's a critical element that, it's a message I deliver to my people internally every day. And certainly something I've said, externally in some interviews as well. But it's a critical element. The truth is, the best medicines in the world, the best devices in the world, do no good if they're not where they need to be in the condition they need to be at the moment they need to be. So I think that's where the connection is. And what this has shown the world, primarily from the challenges around the PPE supply chain when the pandemic first broke out, is that we can't take the logistics for granted anymore. And we have to have more collaborative, more open discussion. We have to look for new ways to solve the puzzle. And if that means that DHL needs to partner with a competitor, or we need to find new ways to work together with the governments or the NGOs, then I'm all for it, whatever it takes. And I'm lucky I work for a company that message is strongly supported by my leadership and our CEOs. So quite proud to be here.
What type of a shout out do you give to the pilots, the men and women who are loading the airplanes, men and women who are driving the trucks, operating the forklifts at the cold storage facilities? What type of a message do you tell to them, especially because they don't have the luxury of working at home like I do, or you and I do right now, but they're also working in a virus-rich environment outside, and they have to follow precautions, wear gloves, wear shields, wear masks, stay 6 feet apart, do all of those things, and yet do it perfectly.
Look, those are the real heroes in the logistics space. I mean, don't get me wrong, healthcare workers are incredible. My wife's one of those. I couldn't be prouder of her and, what that entire sector of people do. But I also think that at times we have a tendency to look at drivers and those people that offload cargo and that work and process and sort packages and, load containers and do all those things. We take those things for granted. I mean, you're in this business a long time like I am, so you know what it's like on the inner workings of an airport and watching the flows of material and move in and out of it. People take it for granted because they think about themselves. They don't understand what goes into loading an aircraft, unloading an aircraft, ensuring that you sort the baggages to the right place or the cargo to the right place, and that you get it off the tarmac as quickly as possible, that you don't let it be exposed to the elements. I mean, it takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment from these folks. And, again, they're absolutely the heroes in the logistics space, in my opinion. The truck drivers, the pilots, all of them. And, all I can extend is a heartfelt thanks to them.
When do you get the shot, or have you already?
No, I haven't yet, but I'll be the first person into it when my age category comes available. I'm not going to be shy. My kids have asked me that question, Dad, how do you feel about taking the vaccine? Look, I do business with Pfizer and these companies. These are some of the smartest people in the world. So I have no concerns, no question about it. I'll take the vaccine in a heartbeat.
In your opinion, Larry, how does this pandemic finally end? And when do you believe we'll have enough vaccine transported around the world and we get to the point where we can have a normal life again, going to dinner in a crowded restaurant, going to a New York Yankees game in New York, or a basketball game in Madison Square Garden, having the family over for a big holiday dinner? How does this all end?
Dan, all I can do is offer a personal opinion, but I think, from a conjecture perspective, I think it's going to come in phases. I don't think it's going to be a big bang where all of a sudden we just flip a switch and all of a sudden we're back to it. And what I think we'll see probably by the second half of the year is the borders will open up a little bit. It'll be easier to flow in and out of it, but again, travel may still be primarily limited, focused or limited to business travel to start with. Perhaps with some of the countries that really depend heavily on tourism to open their borders a little bit more. But then it'll take phases. I mean, I think people are going to test it and see if, the inoculation, I've already heard, some speculation that airlines and governments are going to require you to be able to demonstrate proof of inoculation before you can cross the border, perhaps, or just sit on an airplane for an international flight. So I think a lot of those rules are yet to be written. So I think it's going to be, in my opinion, probably third quarter before we start to see the world start to relax a little bit. And then it's going to come a little bit in a wave. So it'll be a bit at a time, and then they'll test it, and then a bit more, probably not dissimilar to the way the governments and the states in the U.S. have gone about, either increasing or decreasing restrictions based on COVID. So I think it'll be driven by the numbers at an underlying basis, but it's going to be a bit of a slow start, in my estimation.
I've said to my friends, if I can get to sometime between the 4th of July and Labor Day and feel comfortable going to a ball game at Wrigley Field in Chicago, that would be a success. And we will, as a society, we've made enough progress that we're safe enough to be able to do that, probably in that timetable, 8th or 9th month of the year.
I'll tell you what, Dan, I'll make you a commitment. Let's get there, and I'll join you for the game. I'll even buy you a steak at Gibson's afterwards.
You're on. One other question. You've been with DHL in one capacity or another for more than 20 years. When the book is written, do you think this will be the defining moment of your career?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I could have never anticipated this. It's actually 31 years for me. So, I'm 3 decades plus at this point. And, look, all I can say is I'm just so proud to be part of a company that wants to make a difference. And our CEO says our purpose is connecting people, improving lives. Oh, my goodness, I've never seen an opportunity to live that purpose or help fulfill that purpose more than what I've seen at this point in my career. So just happy to be where I am, happy to be healthy and happy and able to appreciate the moment, but certainly keenly anticipating, the next wave and really helping the world start to see some difference. So.
I'll enjoy that steak with you in Chicago. We'll sit down and have a nice time, and I think a nice conversation as well. I'll look forward to it.
I look forward to it, Dan. Thank you so much.
In closing, we wish to thank DHL and Larry St. Onge for being so generous with his time to answer our questions. You can find out more about DHL at dhl.com, and always reach out to me at dronan@ttnews.com, or I'm on Twitter at dronantranspo. That's at dronantranspo. This webcast will be available on demand for viewing at ttnews.com. We look forward to sharing news about our future Newsmaker interviews in the near future. Again, I'm Dan Ronan with Transport Topics. Thanks again to DHL, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information on future episodes, visit ttnews.com. This has been Transport Topics Newsmakers.